Alright, so in today's video I just really wanted to show you guys a little bit more about shaping, maybe add a little bit of detail into the clothing, armor kind of stuff here. Remember, there's all of this is covered in all the videos. We're going to get to the face pretty soon here, but I'll probably start to actually show you guys the face in the next video, but I really just kind of wanted to show you a little bit more about working with armor and just some of the shaping options you have, right? Just so you guys can work on refining the shapes and things like that. So first and foremost, I'll do a little bit more to the armor. Now remember, of course, you can always, in Blender, you can always go to Edit, right, Preferences, and I'll talk about this a little bit later on when I kind of show you guys where to fix the tweak tool. It's a little weird the way they have it set up in Blender 2.82. But when you go into Blender Preferences, right, so Edit, Preferences, there's an area called Key Map. And you can go right up here to the top and you can turn on industry compatible, and that's actually going to make it use a lot of the Maya quick keys. It's going to use Maya navigation, right? Maya navigation for moving your cameras, alt left mouse button for rotate camera, alt middle mouse button for move camera, alt right mouse button for zoom camera, right? It also uses QWERTY, W for move, E for rotate, R for scale. It uses double click. Even other quick keys like Control E for extrusion, things like that. So kind of it actually uses a lot of the quick keys you'd expect from, say, like Maya. So remember that, right? Now I'll come back to this later on because there's a way to turn the tweak tool on to work properly here. In fact, since I'm already in here, I might as well. You might notice that the tweak tool, which is kind of right up in here, right? If I kind of go into there, remember if you hold down the left mouse button on the actual, remember I'm in the modeling layout too, right? There's actually these layouts at the top. I pointed them out a little bit before, but just reminders, right? Layout's kind of the default. Modeling, we'll see a few more of these later on. I'll actually show you a little bit about the sculpting one today, editing, texture paint. We'll see more of these as we go on this semester. But modeling is a cool one for modeling, right? It kind of focuses these tools here and here kind of on the modeling interface. So take advantage of these layouts. Much like Maya kind of had its own workspaces, these are basically Blender's equivalents of them. They're just kind of a little easier to access. But remember, when you're in modeling layout, the kind of very top one here is your selection tools, right? So if I left click drag on that, right, there's the tweak tool. That's actually a version of Maya's tweak tool. By default, they have it set up a little weird though. So I kind of ended up having to fix it. I'll show you in a second. But regular box selects there, circle select, right? Select circle, I said it's tab, is actually well, just like Maya's drag select, right? Take advantage of that. That's kind of cool. There's lasso select. Some of those are in there. But if I go to Edit Preferences, in the same key map area, where you can change to industry compatible, there is an area called 3D View, right? And in there is an area called Mesh, and in there is something called 3D View Tool Tweak. Now, in this case, you'll notice that mine looks different than yours might, right? You might actually see something more like a couple of something like this, right? So there's kind of different stuff in there. You might see a couple of things like these. That'll say like move or something like that, right? So what I did to actually get the tweak tool to work properly for the way I liked using it from the Blender 2.81, but still get it to work in Blender 2.8 2A, which is what's the most recent stable version of Blender. What you can do is there's these little X's, right? You can delete those, right? If you click on the X, it'll actually get rid of this. So what I did is I actually just got rid of all of the ones that were in the tweak. There's I think like 2 of them there. Just hit X and X got rid of them. That's why it's giving me the restore option, right? Because I did adjust this a little bit. And then what I did is I went to add new button, right? And what that did is it brought this up. It kind of allowed me to create a fresh one. And when I created the add new, right, I could name it, right? So if I hit add new, you see how it kind of says none. You can kind of open it up, give it a name, right? Stuff like that, and you can actually switch to something like mouse here. So as you kind of work and you give it a name, you can actually kind of do stuff to it. In this case right here, should have given me a name option here, but in this case, you should be able to name it or pick it or something like that. I think I might have left the select one and changed it, but basically I just wanted to make sure to have mouse on, left mouse. I wanted to give it kind of a name here, like it's like I said, I did 3D view, right? So you can see I kind of did 3D view, view 3D dot select, right? And that, when you hit enter, gives you more of these options, and that's where I kind of made sure to just kind of go in there, and I must have accidentally deleted it. But anyways, as you kind of go in there, you can open this up. You can kind of type that in. You can click on the deselect on nothing. And as you do this, this kind of helps to kind of set this up to work properly. I feel like there was a select option I might have picked when I created this, or it might have already had a select one in there. But once you kind of have that in there, you can kind of adjust this. But it's 3D view select with deselect nothing on. It makes the actual tweak tool work better. And I just kind of hit X to kind of get rid of more of those. And that should give you kind of something that works better, right? So like add new, you can kind of open this up. You can set it to mouse, right? View 3D, dot select. So like I said, I'm just going to kind of go through, create again, hit enter. And you see it actually does change the name to select right there. And that's when you should be able to kind of pick one of the extra options down here. Trying to think why it's not there. Might be just because I already have this on there. But yeah, just kind of keep that in mind. You can kind of play with and adjust this a little bit as you open it up, and you might find you can kind of tweak or adjust that tweak tool better. But remember, it's in the mesh. 3D view tweak. I just kind of end up getting rid of everything else and just kind of create my own new one and kind of redo all that stuff basically to get it working properly. But you should kind of have that deselect on nothing option available. So in this case, I'll just delete, kind of add a new one, open that up. Like we said, switching to mouse is always a good idea. Left mouse is good. And like we said, it's just view 3D dot select, hit enter, and then these other things should be available. Trying to figure out why that's not showing up there though. Always the fun thing of software that you're not always used to. Let's see. There we go. So hit any, and then you can kind of modify that. There we go. So you should just be able to hit any right here, and then kind of pick some of these other options right there. So kind of good to know that this will kind of fix your tweak tool. And then you'll see when I come back to the tweak tool here, you'll notice in this case I'm in 3 for face mode. You'll notice when I left click drag, it just moves it, right? Just moves it according to the view. And this can be a great, fast, awesome way to kind of just keep tweaking the mesh, right? I can hit T, or 2, sorry, to move back to edge mode. And you can easily just kind of view, it's basically view moving these. And it's a great little tool. And of course you can assign your own quick key to it, right? Right click on it, change shortcuts so you can add your own quick key to it. But I just want to make sure you guys know, in another video, I did have that in earlier videos, how to tweak that. I figured it's not going to hurt to get a little more reinforcement on that stuff. Remember, your selection types are up here, particularly when you hit 4 in modeling, right? 4 puts you in object mode, and you can go back and forth between your objects, of course, so right here also. But once you hit 1, 2, or 3, that puts you into your regular selection modes here. And you can swap back and forth between those without turning your tweak tool off or on, which is really cool. So this is one of those tools for shaping that I just want to make sure you guys are aware of, know that's there. I've talked about it in the previous classes, but it's great. It's really useful. Obviously, move, rotate, and scale can always be used. You can even turn on what's called proportional editing. This is basically like Maya soft selection, right? So if I click on that to turn it on, now you'll see when I grab something, it kind of, there's like a little bit of a circle around it. And if you just hold it down and then you hold your page up, sorry, if you just do page up, you'll notice kind of it expands that soft selection, and page down kind of makes it smaller. And this can give you kind of a cool way to use tweak tool with some of your selection tools. And you notice you don't even have to be exactly on the vertex edge or face, right? And it works with all your selection types. But this can be a great way to kind of get a nice little bit of soft kind of fall off from whatever you're selecting to adjust forms. And it's right there. You can turn that off and on. So once again, this is one of those things that now that you guys have had several videos of this and a little bit of time to spend in Blender, once you know how to turn industry compatible on and you start to get used to the interface, it's honestly pretty nice software. Like I said, I've kind of been growing to appreciate it more and more as I've been, not only using it more since the 2.8 series came out, but teaching it. And at the end of the day, you'll see that most of this stuff works like it does in Maya. The interface is a bit different, but you're actually not relearning anything. As if you've seen from the other videos, we just extrude faces off, we extrude border edges off. The same techniques apply here. In this case, I'm just going to hit Q for the regular selection tool, right? But remember, if you left-click drag, if you just hold down left mouse button up here, you can pick Circle Select, or Select Circle. I've actually got it set to Quick Key Tab, like Maya. And what you can do is you can just left-click drag, and it's your drag select, right? Hold down Shift just like in Maya, and you can actually add selections, right? And of course, remember, I've got the blue one over here for my modifiers, and you'll notice that there is a mirror modifier, right? You just click on this little pull down, and this is where you can add things like your subdivisional surface for your smooth preview, where you can add a mirror. And that's actually the two modifiers I have on here, right? I have mirror, and then I have subdivisional surface. Particularly with subdivisional surface, I kind of turn this one on just to see the proper smooth cage. Also, you might see it looks kind of faceted shaded. Remember, if you right-click in face mode, you can just do smooth shade on any polygon, right? And that'll smooth shade everything. So once you actually get used to those things, and remember, mirror, I have merge on with a bit of a merge limit, and that just makes it so that it merges down the center. When you get used to these things, it's not quite as easy as Maya, but it's still pretty easy, and it works pretty well. So what I wanted to show is that you can actually select some faces, and you can kind of create like little insets of raised panels on your armor, right? So remember, in this case I'm in 3 for face mode. Remember, if you hit right mouse button, right, you know, right click, it brings a lot of your options, not every option, but a lot of your options up for your tools. And one of them is Inset Faces. And when I click on that and I drag up or down, you'll see how it kind of scales them in a little bit relative to each other, right? And then what I could do is I could right click and I could extrude faces along normals, right? And then I can move that up or down, then left click. And you see how that actually kind of created this little raised inset area. If I wanted to, of course, I could use the tweak tool to tweak these shapes more, right? In this case, I have my quick key set for it, Control T. You guys would probably want to set your own. And of course, I could switch to 1 for vertex mode, right? I can just tweak those a little bit. Remember, it's right up here. So if you hold down left mouse button, they're right up here. I just happened to have already set Control T as the quick key for it. So right, remember, we can tweak those things. I'll hit Tab to switch back to my circle select because that's the quick key I did for that. Remember, right click on this tool and you see Change Shortcut is an option right there, right? Change Shortcut. And you'll also notice that you'll have all of these tools in here, and if you right click, you can see Assign Shortcut there also, right? So remember, all your tools that you get with right click are actually right up here. So once you get used to Blender 2.8's interface, great update. I really am starting to appreciate Blender a lot, actually. They just really have made the interface just come right out in the open. So it's much easier to find and get to stuff, particularly if you're newer to the software, right? As well as just kind of making it work like the industry standard Maya does. So you see you can kind of do those little things. So I'll hit 3 for face mode again, and I'm just going to select kind of these guys right here. And I'm going to right click, and I'm just going to extrude along normal for those guys. Now in this case, you might see that we're getting a little bit of this problem right here, right? That is one of the drawbacks to Blender, right? Is that you will get double head syndrome. That's because of the mirror. When you're actually extruding stuff that's kind of going across the mirror, it does this. Now the cool thing is you'll notice that since we see these out in the open, I can easily just select those, hit delete. And remember, when you hit delete, it brings up these keys right here. Now, if it's edges, you want to dissolve edges, but I found with faces, just hitting delete faces is fine. And you see how those are gone now? Now, you'll notice that this is pinching weird up here, and that's because there are actually still faces inside of there. So believe it or not, if you're in that kind of blue, and this is just more of a recap, show you 1 or 2 things that you didn't know. I'm going to show you a little bit of shaping more. But I want to recap some of the things in the earlier videos. These things are in the earlier videos, but it never hurts to reinforce it, right? To point it out again. So right here, remember that little blue wrench is your modifiers. What's cool is you'll see this is where your mirror modifier is at, right? Remember I created that mirror modifier in the earlier videos, and it just stays on and works pretty well after the fact. I can just hit X, because that's what we mirrored off, to turn that off. And you see how you can actually get access to those hidden faces and hit delete faces. And then what we could do is we could easily just turn that mirror back on. And then I can maybe go to T for edges. And if I wanted to, I could just select this edge, right? You might even just hit your regular Q Remember, Q will actually toggle through your different selection types also. And that way I can just select this kind of one edge. Remember, W for move. Remember, middle mouse button will automatically move it, and you'll notice that as you move these kind of in towards the center, it automatically merges, because that merge in the mirror is on. So once you get used to that, this actually works pretty well. And it's one of those weird things where it's a little bit different than Maya, maybe not quite as cool as Maya in those respects, but it's pretty good. And once you get used to it, it works pretty well. It's pretty stable. You know, you have to pull pretty far to kind of unweld it. And you can just tweak, right? If you wanted to maybe tighten this up, you could always hold down right mouse button and loop, cut, and slide, right? And just kind of click an edge loop right in there. There we go. Believe it or not, if you right-click, you'll see that there is actually in that same menu that we have extrude and loop, cut, slide, there is edge slide, right? And then you'll see we can kind of slide these edges along the surface, just like Maya slide tool works. So one of the biggest things at the end of the day that I want you guys to take away from this is that this stuff basically works the same in all software. It really does. At the end of the day, the software doesn't actually matter that much. One of the reasons I wasn't the biggest fan of Blender in the past is I just felt like some workflow things and overall interface things weren't good. Not that the toolset wasn't capable. The newest versions have really addressed that in a great way that have made me really honestly like Blender quite a bit. And as we're starting to see, you know, it's a great option. And Blender's, like we said, fully free, right? Not just educationally free like Maya is if you create an account with Autodesk. Blender's free, right? You can use it professionally, right? And its current development pace for where it's going is quite awesome. And the 2.8 series was just an unbelievably awesome, massive update for them. So just a little more before I show you shaping. I'll just, hit tab for my drag select again, right? Because that's the quick key I've set to it. But remember, it's all right up here. Remember, shift still adds to selection, control still subtracts. And I can select those, and I can hit right click, and I can do the inset faces again, just to kind of, and sometimes you have to kind of bring the cursor around a little bit. There we go, bring that in a little bit there. Now in this case, if it gets a little bit weird in shape, you can always do things like this smooth command here. Just kind of bring that towards the center, kind of smooths it, flattens it out a little bit. And then we could right click, extrude faces along normals, bring those out. And you'll see that we've kind of created this little bit of a panel. Now, of course, W for move, and you could use the handles, but middle mouse button, remember, just free moves, right? If I wanted to kind of put a little extra loop in there, right click. Usually better to be in edge mode though. 2 for edges, right click, loop, cut, and slide. Remember, if you left click drag, it'll actually slide it as you put it in. If you just click, it'll kind of put it right in the middle. So, cool little ways to add these little bit extra bits to your armor model. Now, one of the last things I wanted to leave you with you guys today was some sculpting tools, right? Because I showed you what proportional does for shaping. I showed you the tweak tool and basically how to go into preferences and kind of fix that, right? Kind of right in there, kind of set that all up. That's where industry compatible is as well. It'll make this work way more like Maya, right? Remember, the videos are always there, right? I have that link. I actually created a channel in our teams there, so you can always go back and rewatch those. But one of the last things I want to do is just show you a little bit of shaping tools with sculpting tools, because we are eventually getting into high-risk sculpting, and Blender's got some pretty good ones for those. Now, in this case, I'm going to go to 4, right? 4 is the quick key for your object selection mode. Now, technically, you'll kind of go over to here, particularly whatever mode you're in, you'll see there's the edit mode menu here. And you see there's object mode 4, edit mode 1. You won't see 2 and 3 for edges and faces, but that's what they do. Edit mode actually technically puts you in vertex mode. You'll see that you can actually turn sculpt mode on when you're in the modeling, right? So if I hit 5, you'll notice we can stay in the modeling menu viewport, but get all the sculpting tools, right? Inversely, though, I don't want to shape on both objects. So remember, 4 is object mode. And you see how we can select the different objects, right? So I can select the body, and then you can go to 3 for face mode again. Of course, 5 will put us into sculpt, right? And you see the sculpting is related to the actual body model. But one of the things you can do, of course, is just click on the sculpting layout, right? And you'll notice we get the shadings a little bit different, right? We can kind of see that the properties are set up for your brush sculpting properties. And you have a ton of sculpting tools over here, right? Now, You do have kind of some of your normal sculpting tools like draw, where you can just kind of move along the surface and it pulls it out along the normal direction if you want to use that. At this stage, I don't really worry about that one so much because we're just doing primary shaping. So I like grab, right? Now, when you turn grab on, it actually uses the quick keys from ZBrush, right? The right brackets, right? Kind of next to P and kind of above your enter key on your keyboard. The right brackets go up and down in units of 10. But if you hit S and drag, right? So just hit S and then you can let go and you just drag. That actually allows you to create a smoother brush size. Those are actually the ZBrush keys, not the Mudbox keys. And what you can do with this tool, right? Make it a little bit bigger. Is what's really cool is it works a lot like kind of tweak with the proportional on, right? And you'll see how you can kind of pull and adjust the shape a little bit if you want to, right? And kind of maybe pull the muscles out a bit more there. We are eventually going to use this for full high-resolution sculpting, of course. But believe it or not, these tools can actually be pretty great at just allowing you to do large-scale shaping as well. Right? So we can kind of just get in here and bring them around a little bit. One of the things you can do is if you hold down Shift, it'll smooth to soften things out. So if you've kind of got a really kind of creased, bunched up area like that, if you hold down Shift, you can soften it a lot, right? And that can help you to really kind of refine the shape. One of the things you'll notice, though, that with my shape here, is that I'm really trying to make sure that there's a good amount of, say my thighs are thicker than my knee is, but you see how the calf gets a little thicker again, and then the ankle gets a little thinner. And you can even see from the side view, right, that there's kind of a, kind of a bit of the shape of the butt kind of sticking out there a little bit, right? But also you can kind of see how your leg kind of arches back a little bit here. You can even see it in the back here, right? Remember, your actual kind of view layer here, you can just turn eyeball off. So you can turn the visibility off for your objects. And you see how the back actually has a bit of curvature and the stomach has a bit of curvature as well, right? These are those important things for shape. See how kind of our heads offset backwards a little bit? The pecs kind of pull down and out forward a little bit. You can do this through whatever shaping tools you want, right? So you can kind of see this grab tool you might really like a lot, right? Might be a really great option for doing some shaping for you, right? But one of the things you'll notice is that your tweak and your soft selection tools can do a lot of this as well. And like so, you get Shift to smooth. So remember that sculpting tool's there. You can see you can control the amount of the strength, things like that. We're going to get into doing the sculpting a little bit more as we go along. Right now we want to kind of get the whole model built. But I want to make sure that you see that there is a sculpting section and there are sculpting tools that can give you some shaping options. Now, do we have to use this sculpting tool for shaping? No, if you really don't want to, right, you don't have to. I'm just wanting to make sure you guys know that this is an option. Some of you guys are a little more advanced than the others are, have got more experience. And so it's great to kind of see that some of these tools really are in here just like they would be in Mudbox or even Maya, right? Maya kind of has its own versions of these as well, right? The cool thing about Blender, though, is it supports full high-resolution sculpting. Now, one last thing before we're done here, I'm going to go back to modeling, is I want to talk to you guys about the cursor. Some of you guys have noticed this cursor a little bit, right? Usually if you're just doing some extruding with the free move stuff, you don't have to worry about it too much. One of the things, though, is it is this guy right here. See how it kind of actually, they look the same? It's right below the select tools. If you click on this, what you can do is you can actually put this anywhere you want to, right? And this can kind of act like your pivot, right? So with that put there, what I can do, or I can put it like right here in the center of the arm. What I can do is I can go back to my selection tools, right? Maybe just hit Q to toggle through to this rectangle select. And I can select these guys right here. Usually rectangle select by default doesn't grab everything. So remember, up arrow, like the actual up arrow on the keyboard, right, actually is your grow and shrink. It is in your select menu, select more or less, right? Up arrow, down arrow. That's your grow and shrink. Now you'll notice that that cursor's there. And of course I can click on the cursor again here and I can switch it back to there if I wanted to. What's cool though is if I hit my rotate tool, you can actually orient your the orientation itself to it, right? So you can hit cursor and you see how kind of your manipulator is actually oriented to the cursor shape. But the one next to it, not the magnet for snapping tools, we saw that a little bit on the topo stuff, or the soft selection, but the one that kind of looks like a chain, right? Chain link. If you click on that, this actually gives you kind of control over your position, right? And the more I'm using this, it's kind of a little bit better than mine. It's just marginally. Not as good as Moto's. Moto's is mind-blowing, but it's honestly easily as good as mine, maybe a little bit better. But you'll see you can actually use 3D cursor, right? And so what you can do is you'll see that actually sets your action center to the cursor. And so what you can do is you can easily rotate your arm kind of from that vantage point if you wanted to, right? So it's kind of neat, right? Like if I hit up arrow, kind of bring it up to there, and then I click on cursor again, and I place it up here, and hit E for rotate. See how it's kind of automatically already set there? And this gives me the cool kind of ability to just kind of maybe make a little bit of some quick rotation changes from the actual point I want it to be at instead of the center of the selection, right? So I figured this might be a cool thing to start to talk to you guys about a little bit, that you have this in here, right? And that this will give you the ability to kind of change the pose, if you will, on your characters a little bit, right? It's kind of neat. So you have that there, and then of course you can always switch these back to medium points. Can usually default kind of goes to the center of the selection. You can set it back to world, right? Global's kind of like Maya's equivalent to world. And there we go, right? We just kind of have a little bit of just kind of solves a little more of just kind of an informational video for you guys, just to kind of reinforce some things. Nothing too heavy in terms of modeling. I just wanted to kind of talk about and give you guys some options for some tools, right? That you might find useful, right? None of these necessarily have to be used, but I figured better safe than sorry for you guys to start to understand and know these. All right, that'll be a great place to stop. And like I said, we'll do I'll start working on the face next video.